Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back another video from Grand Line Review. Now, we're checking out why One Piece is too hard to start. I want a more up-to-date reasoning as to why. I've been through this before, why One Piece is so difficult. There's lots of manga, there's lots of anime, blah de blah de blah. But now, I think because it's so popular and there's so many other things going on, it could also be quite confusing. You've got the Netflix live action, which is going into its second season, renewed for a third. Then you've got the manga, obviously. You've got the anime, and normies that are probably trying to get into it, like, where the bloody hell do I start now? There's an extra one, and we've got the other anime coming out on Netflix whenever that comes out, which is like starting from the beginning again. It's a lot. Let's and now there's these novels about the female characters for One Piece, which will probably turn into manga. We got Ace's story in novel form and manga form. You've got the one-off made by the guy that did the Food Wars manga. Um, yeah, did quite a bit. Let's see what Grand Line Review has to say on a more up-to-date version of why One Piece is too hard to get into.
Why is One Piece so impossibly difficult to start?
I don't know.
Let's get straight into unzipping the crotch of this video and talk about length. This is by far the most common reason people have for not starting One Piece, and that's more than fair because look,
Yeah.
it's a big commitment.
It is.
Manga began in the previous century in 1997,
Which is just crazy.
the anime in 1999, and if you want to read or watch either, then you're looking at over 1,000 chapters or over 1,000 episodes. Starting One Piece can feel a lot like proposing on a first date.
But wait, I don't know. No, I can't. I was about to say, but it's worth it. But then that's just really thrown me on that. Like, that's not. Don't do that. Don't do that. But read One Piece. I keep pointing over here as if you can see what I'm pointing at. Well, that's where all my One Piece mangas are. I'm still pointing. You can't see.
You don't know this person, but you are signing up to spend a massive chunk of your life with them. Although the funny thing is that people have been saying this ever since I first started reading, which given my truly advanced age was a long time ago. When I was a young lad trying to recommend One Piece to people, it was the exact same response. Mate, look, I don't know if I could read a series that's almost 400 chapters long. There's a lot. Which is a number that seems incredibly manageable and laughable now, given that we've almost tripled it.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that the issue has only gotten worse now that there are over 1,100 chapters.
Crazy.
And even if you have 24 hours of free time each and every day, this is likely going to be the single most time-consuming endeavor of your calendar year. Again, it's a big commitment, especially in modern times where television has been working tirelessly to reduce commitment issues. For example, the Netflix model of 8 to 10 episodes a series. Committing to 8 to 10 hours is a much easier decision to make than seeing the One Piece anime and knowing that what you're signing up for is over 400 hours.
Damn. Yeah, like people want to binge it, don't they? Everyone wants to binge stuff now. It's like me. I wait till the series ends on Disney Plus and then binge it. One Piece, you just gotta dive in. Gotta dive right in there.
What even is 400 hours? It's such a large number that it becomes difficult to mentally quantify.
That is
And I think this
difficult.
is a huge part of why Wit Studio are currently producing the One Piece anime
Here we
remake,
go. Some more stuff to watch.
which would be designed to partially fix the issue by offering seasonal content. It's much easier to recommend to someone to try out one season of 26 episodes than to recommend a series of 1,000 plus episodes, which is such a mess to keep track of. Because as a weekly series, the One Piece anime doesn't even divide into seasons, at least not cleanly, which makes it seem that much more unfathomably big. How many seasons of One Piece are there, you ask? One. How many episodes in that season? Over 1,000. I will say that the English dub does try to divide its production into seasons,
That
but
is quite
also
funny.
becomes a big mess because you end up with releases like Season 14, Voyage 15, and it all just blends into this mush of meaningless numbers. Like how Attack on Titan started calling everything the final season,
Part 3. Oh,
Part
second.
3, Part 1.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah.
all of One Piece sounds like with the English dub. But you know, let's get back to length. My counter to length is that it's only an
Throwback.
issue if it's something you're not enjoying. And if you could be promised the greatest media experience of your life and have that extended into what seems like an eternity, then doesn't that sound like a pretty damn good value proposition? And crazily enough, a common complaint you'll hear from One Piece fans who are caught up is that it's not long enough. Everyone who's caught up is desperately craving more fictional pirate content on a weekly basis.
I don't know, like me, I like waiting until the physical manga comes out and then catching up that way. So that's technically me binging. But as the manga volume comes out, so I'm up to 100 109. And then when 110 comes out, I'll buy it, read it, and then wait for 111, read that. You know, that's my more manageable thing now. Obviously, I had to catch up. That was very different at the time. But now I'm at a position where I kind of chill with it because I'm also reading Kaiju number 8 every month as that comes out. I'm also reading Chainsaw Man when that comes out, Kagurabachi, Zom 100, and I'm also starting Steel Ball Run.
And that's why I often describe One Piece like a drug. The story, the characters, and the world are so good that people get genuinely addicted to it. But not in a way that ruins your life. In a way that gives you a shining beacon of happiness every week to look forward to. And in a way that makes us all envious of everyone who hasn't started One Piece yet, because they have an infinite story banquet ready and waiting to consume.
So
Length is one
much
of the
good
greatest
stuff.
strengths of One Piece. It's long because it is a true epic of our generation that deserves and demands that time. And I promise you, it will be worth your time. However, the other most common roadblock to commencing fictional pirate enjoyment is simply the art style, which is an acquired taste for many, often evoking a very goofy, childish impression, and for good reason. You'd be surprised just how often many of these goofy elements evolve into rather shockingly relevant plot points. But it does initially give the impression of One Piece being a kid's show or kids manga. And to be completely fair to this impression, the target audience of One Piece are Japanese teenagers. However, it's one of those series that has managed to transcend that target audience, and in fact, according to surveys in Japan, the target audience only makes up 22% of total consumers of the series, with 70% of One Piece fans being aged between 20 and 70 years old. And on the upper end of that scale, 35% of fans were between the ages of 40 to 70. So it definitely has a broad appeal. And if the art gives you the impression that this is just a kid's show, that is definitely not the case. It's hard to describe because I don't think we have a Western equivalent of it, but One Piece seamlessly integrates very serious adult content with very youthful gags. We've had multiple genocide, slavery, racism, human experimentation, cannibalism, and so much more.
Dark humor. Oh, so sad.
Including several allusions to the outright word that starts with R, and I can't say it on this channel because it'll get flagged. Which isn't to say that One Piece is a super dark and edgy series.
It can
it's
be.
Not, but it does have those elements, which just happen to be juxtaposed against the most ridiculous moments of comedy, which creates an incredible contrast because the moments of drama and horror hit that much harder being surrounded by so much levity. Just when you think you're in a wacky, fun world, nothing can go wrong, everything's amazing, something goes wrong, and it goes wrong bad. It's a series of high emotional highs and very low emotional lows. There are moments where you'll never feel happier, and there are moments where you'll never feel sadder. And in between those, moments where you'll never feel like someone deserves to be punched in the face harder. It delivers on all fronts. And the only reason why it's able to seamlessly blend between all of those emotional beats is because of the art style. You just wouldn't be able to pull this off in a more sleek and serious world. And being off-put by the art style isn't an issue exclusive to One Piece. The exact same opposition to art style happens with any series that deviates from the manga norm. And another great example would be JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which I think is initially an even more difficult hurdle to overcome, but in both cases, it is well worth getting over. But also, One Piece is sometimes hard to recommend to people because of the premise of the series, which is Yara and pirates. Lots of pirates. Honestly, pirates in our current media landscape, they're kinda lame. And I think this comment sums it up quite nicely. What stopped me was actually the premise. I hated pirate stories as a kid with a passion. I initially planned to hate watch it, being One Piece, before it accidentally became my favorite show. And I think that is a surprisingly common experience.
Yeah, because it's not really about pirates. They just are pirates, if you know what I mean. They just are. But, yeah, that's not like the main focus. It's just the loose kind of idea that starts it off.
Not to actively hate watch One Piece,
And it's
but
just a label so that you know who the good guys, bad guys are, kind of. The pirates, for the viewer, are the good guys, and the Marines are the bad guys. You just need to, like, you know, it's like reds and blues, and so on and so forth.
or succumbing to it. To be worn down by your sheer awareness of it, and then you actually give it a go, and then whoops, you've just accidentally a whole life-changing experience. As far as I can remember, there's only been one time in my life that pirates have been particularly cool, and that was during the prime Pirates of the Caribbean era, which is well over. But other than that, you know, pirates have been a bit of a pop culture outcast for the past few decades. So to a lot of people, One Piece doesn't have that conceptual hook. It sounds kind of lame, especially as an anime or a manga series, because very rarely rarely does one turn to an anime or manga experience for something that is such a well-worn concept in the West. A lot of the appeal of anime and manga comes from that immersion into Japanese culture,
like
which I should say is still very
different.
present in One Piece. However, when you compare the proposition of pirates to, say, a series about ninjas or Shinigami, the latter two tend to evoke a much more cool and much more intriguing feeling. A sense of mystery that the Western world hasn't already done to death. Because everyone has preconceived notions of pirates, and those notions are almost certainly the yar and we hearty bring the girl types.
Yar.
One Piece pirates are not those traditional pirates. There are giant pirates, zombie pirates, cyborg pirates, fish pirates, beast pirates, sky pirates, and even female pirates. In fact, every pirate you can think of, except for stereotypical pirates, exist in One Piece.
Yes.
Genuinely, think of a thing right now and then put the word pirate on the end. It probably exists in this world. And part of this is because the author Eiichiro Oda is trying to tell the story of how that stereotypical pirate came to be. So we're on a journey to get there, which means no peg legs, no parrots, and there's even an explicit rule that there are no eye patches. At least not until the end. There will be one. So if the idea of pirates was putting you off, then let me just say very quickly that you're gonna forget about everything you thought you knew about pirates. But we do have another hurdle to jump, which is, sure, conceptually, I'll give it a go, but where do I even start the One Piece? Compared to, say, Western comics and series, you might think that One Piece is a fairly easy starting point. You just say, alright, mate. I don't know why I did it in English, but you say, alright, mate, in whatever accent you want, and then say, Chapter 1. That's your start point. But I've always found this a bit awkward because I don't think Chapter 1 is a solid launching point. And this is an issue that is exclusive to English speakers because...
Oh, don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do what I think you're about to do. And tell them to start from a different point. It's like when Mother's Basement did the how to watch JoJo's, and then it was just like, no, just watch it from the start. Please don't do it. Please don't.
In the early days, the Viz manga was not a good translation. It was put together very sloppily and with a children's audience in mind. So a lot of the dialogue is really cringy, trying to appeal to small children, and it's translated very haphazardly. Now the manga does get a lot better, but it's definitely a rough start. And on top of that, for anyone not familiar with the concept of reading manga, which is most anime watchers actually, it's a big adjustment to get used to reading panels right to left. I tried to read it when I was 8 to try and impress a girl in my class who was a fan. I didn't know manga was read right to left back then though, so I dropped it after chapter 1 because it made my head hurt. A lot of you are probably going to say, it's skill issue and move on, but it's still a consideration. It's one more mental hurdle that makes people not want to bother running the race. Open up the manga, you go, what the hell is this? How do I even read you? I've got better things to do. So putting that to one side, in that case, how about starting with episode 1 of the anime? Seems fairly simple, but this comes with caveats as well, because the Toei anime is now 25 years old. And while it definitely kicks off with a charming 90s nostalgic style, the anime has aged, and it's becoming increasingly more difficult for it to command attention over modern series, like say Demon Slayer or Attack on Titan. Again, this is why Wit Studio are producing a remake, because as much as I have nostalgia for the anime, the fact that it looks so ancient, I mean, it's in 4:3 aspect ratio. Nothing's been in 4:3 for like 20 years. That is a challenge to get people to give it a shot when they have so many other modern choices. Not to mention that the anime is packed with filler, some non-negotiable filler in the early days that gets integrated with canon stuff and it just gets a bit murky. But then I suppose now we also have the new entry point of the One Piece live action.
The live action, here we go.
Which is short, only 8 episodes. Very easily digestible, but that's also what hinders it. They had to cut out so much to fit a whole saga into 8 episodes.
They made quite a few changes.
That it is very rarely what I would recommend as a launching point. I'd only do it if you were dealing with someone who was adamant about not watching anime or reading manga. In which case, yeah, why not give it a shot? Give that person a little taste of the flavor of the world and make them go, maybe anime or manga, not so bad. But also, in defense of the live action, it does seem to have converted a pretty disgusting amount of people who were not One Piece or even anime fans in general prior to its release.
Because it throws me, actually, because there must be a huge fan base for the live action One Piece, because when you go into, now bear with me on this, when you go into Primark, they got One Piece stuff, cool. And Primark, they're not stupid. They're just gonna sell stuff, because when it comes to anime and that, they're only gonna sell popular things to make the money. And then you look at it and you go, oh, that's the live action logo on there. Oh, that's the retweet map from the it's live action One Piece. It's not the anime or manga One Piece on the hoodie and the shirt and everything at the moment. It's the live action one, and we haven't even got season 2 out yet, if you know what I mean. So it's popular enough to be selling whilst not being like a recently aired thing.
It's doing something right and well worth considering. But on this issue, even though I am a manga supremacist, I would personally recommend someone starting with the subbed anime. I think it's the easiest to access because it's both free on Crunchyroll and it's also on Netflix if you already have a subscription there. And reading the manga is not free. It requires a Viz subscription. You need to go out of your way to pay cash money to do so. Unless you want to find some,
Stop being cheap.
certain methods on the internet
Stop being
which
cheap.
do exist. But the anime doesn't have the initial translation problems, and I think it's currently the best opening to the series that English speakers have available to them. Now, here is a new problem. When I was in high school, One Piece had practically no fan base, and I'm talking both online and in real life, especially in real life. So it was a huge struggle to recommend a series that no one else was reading or watching, because naturally you'd think, there's probably a reason for that. And in general, it was so much easier to pick up Naruto, buy an Akatsuki cloak, and immediately become part of a much larger established fan base of ninja appreciators. But these days, One Piece has the reverse problem. There are so many people so thoroughly invested in it, all making videos on the internet telling you to watch One Piece, that the sheer hype behind the series is actively turning people off. There's actually a term for this. It's called hyperversion, which is the innate tendency to avoid works that people have specifically told you that you will love.
Right,
And One
yeah.
Piece fans are very guilty of generating some of the greatest quantities of hyperversion, because we constantly say stuff like greatest story of all time, good world building, great world building,
Amazing world building.
phenomenal world building.
The world building's
characters,
amazing.
The fights, the fruit, it will change your life. The way we sound to outsiders is almost like a religious cult. And every time we preach the word of One Piece in
The
those
word of One
lofty
Piece.
sentences, no matter how true it may be, and it's very true, what it does is erects an insulating wall around everyone not currently invested in the series. So weirdly enough, if you really want to get someone into One Piece, you need to be a bit more casual, you need to be a bit more suave. Tone down the language to a more subtle, mate, this is pretty good, and let that seed of curiosity germinate within the minds of your victims. Because One Piece has so many hurdles to get over as is. We don't need another one. But if you are on the fence and just maybe consider this your gentle push, go and watch an episode or 2 or 3 and make up your own mind instead of listening to strange men on the internet. Although, if you do insist on listening to strange men on the internet, then subscribe to the channel because you cannot have it both ways. Either you subscribe or you watch One Piece. That is the deal.
There we go. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of different options to get into it. Don't know, because he's right as well. It depends on whether you're an actual anime manga fan as well. The live action's probably the way to go. If not, yeah, it is a lot. It is a lot. But I'm glad I got into it. It's great. And then I love now every now and then another volume comes out, read it, catch up, boom. If you've not got into One Piece, do it however you want. But just do it. Thanks for watching.